Starfall, the navigation system, flickered once before plunging the shuttle into darkness. Finn Morgan gripped the controls, his knuckles white against the steel as the craft shuddered violently around him. Mayday, mayday. This is Expedition Scout. 317, systems critical. Approaching uncharted lunar body. Request immediate. The transmission cut as abruptly as it began. Through the viewport, the silver-blue surface of Terra Luna grew larger with terrifying speed. Finn had volunteered for this reconnaissance mission, expecting routine scans of a supposedly uninhabited moon. The sudden electromagnetic storm had other plans. Come on, he muttered, manually overriding the landing protocols. The auxiliary power sputtered to life, giving him just enough control to angle the descent. The shuttle screamed through the thin atmosphere, heat shields glowing. Orange against the eternal night, impact came with a bone-jarring crunch. Finn's head snapped forward, then back against the headrest. Pain exploded behind his eyes before darkness claimed him. When consciousness returned, it brought the copper taste of blood and the hiss of escaping oxygen. Finn blinked, assessing his injuries, bruised ribs. Possible concussion, but nothing. Immediately fatal. The real danger lay outside. According to preliminary scans, Terra Luna's atmosphere contained trace oxygen, but not enough for human lungs. He had perhaps 6 hours of suit oxygen remaining. 6 hours to repair a communications array that looked like twisted modern art. Finn sealed his helmet and limped from the wreckage, stepping onto the crystalline surface. Jagged formations rose around him, catching starlight in hypnotic patterns. The moon's massive gas giant parent hung in the sky, casting an eerie blue glow across the landscape. Beautiful death trap, he murmured, deploying his emergency beacon. The scanner on his wrist showed no signs of civilization, which aligned with mission briefing. This moon was supposed to be a pristine research opportunity, not a rescue scenario. First indication he wasn't alone came as a subtle vibration beneath his boots. Then another. Rhythmic. Deliberate footsteps. Finn turned slowly, hand moving to his sidearm. From between crystalline formations emerged figures that defied everything he'd been told about Terra Luna. They moved with predatory grace, not their bodies. Tall and lean, covered in what appeared to be living crystal growths forming a natural armor. Where human skin would be, they had a translucent azure membrane that pulsed with internal light. Their faces were almost humanoid, but with sharper angles, large iridescent eyes, and no visible mouth. Lo Finn said, knowing they couldn't understand but attempting diplomacy nonetheless. My ship crashed. I mean, no harm. The tallest of the creatures tilted its head, crystal protrusions chiming softly with the movement. Finn felt a strange pressure behind his eyes. It's like the beginning of a headache, but more focused, more intentional. Outsider, trespasser, sacrifice. The words weren't spoken. They appeared in his mind with crystal clarity, accompanied by emotions that weren't his curiosity, suspicion, and ritual purpose. Telepaths, Finn whispered in awe. Before he could process this revelation, the creatures surrounded him. Their movements were coordinated with unsettling precision, leaving no avenue for escape. The tallest raised a crystalline appendage, and Finn's world exploded into prismatic light. When the light faded, he found himself immobilized in a cage of living crystal, being carried through a landscape that grew increasingly structured. Natural formations gave way to deliberate architecture, towering spires and pavilions crafted from the same crystal as their bodies. At the center of this alien city stood a figure different from the others, taller with crystal formations that glowed with internal violet light rather than blue. As Finn was brought before this being, he felt a new presence touch his mind deeper, more powerful, somehow, curious. I am Nixara, voice of the void, leader of the Soltari. And you, Starfallen. One will serve our purpose. Claiming the Soltari carried Finn's crystal cage to a vast amphitheater carved into the moon's surface. Thousands of the crystalline beings filled the terrace seating, their bodies pulsing with synchronous blue light. At the center stood a raised dais of black crystal, absorbing rather than reflecting the ambient glow. Nixara walked ahead, her violet-hued exoskeleton commanding immediate silence as she approached the platform. Unlike the others, whose crystal growths formed practical patterns, Hers spiraled into elaborate configuration status markers. Finn guessed, or perhaps indicators of power. The cycle continues. Her voice resonated in the collective consciousness of her people, and by extension, in Finn's mind. The void delivers unto us that which we require for continuation. Finn tested the boundaries of his confinement. The crystal responded by constricting slightly, sending a warning pulse of pain through his nervous system. "What exactly am I required for?" he asked aloud, unsure if verbal communication held any meaning here. Nixara turned toward him, her faceted eyes narrowing. "Your voice is crude, but your mind speaks clearer than any outsider we have encountered." "Interesting." The cage dissolved. Suddenly, dropping Finn onto his knees before the assembly, 4 guards immediately flanked him, their crystalline appendages forming into what could only be described as weapons sharp, glinting spears that hummed with energy. A new presence approached the dais Sultari with aggressive red undertones. To its blue luminescence, its crystal formations were jagged, almost battle-scarred compared to the others. The ritual must proceed. Nixara, this new entity projected, its thoughts carrying an unmistakable challenge. The Starfallen are sacrifices, not conversation partners. Their energy feeds the void that sustains. Finn felt a chill run through him. Sacrifice. The word carried images of previous humanoid visitors, their life force somehow extracted and channeled into the crystal structures of Terra Luna. Nixara's response was cool, controlled. "I am aware of tradition, Drakkar. I've upheld it longer than you have existed." She approached Finn, circling him with deliberate steps. Each movement sent cascades of light through her crystal formations. When she stood directly before him, she placed a crystalline hand against his helmet. "Remove this barrier," she commanded. "That's not a good idea," Finn replied. "Your atmosphere is compatible with your needs, though the composition differs from your home. Our scans of your physiology confirm this. Remove it, or we shall remove it for you." With reluctant hands, Finn disengaged his helmet seals. The first breath of Terra Luna's air was sharp, metallic, but breathable. His eyes watered slightly as they adjusted to the unfiltered light of the Crystal City. Nixara's appendage touched his cheek, cold at first, but warming quickly. The contact sent a jolt through Finn's mind, images flashing too quickly to comprehend. Emotions that weren't his own washing over him in waves. "Curious," she projected, her mental voice now privately directed to him alone. "Your species imagines itself alone in the cosmos, yet your minds are remarkably adaptable to connection. Your thoughts? They resonate in unusual patterns." Drakkar stepped forward impatiently. "The alignment of the void crescends. Nixara, the sacrifice must be prepared." The assembly hummed in agreement, their collective consciousness pushing against Finn's mind like an incoming tide. Nixara withdrew her touch, and Finn immediately felt the loss of connection. She turned to address the gathering, her posture shifting to one of ceremonial formality. "The void demands completion, as it has since the first awakening. But tonight, the patterns shift." Without warning, she reached out and grasped Finn's hand. Pain and pleasure shot up his arm in equal measure as their skin made contact. The crystal formations on her body glowed brilliant violet, then began to extend tendrils across the small distance between them. Before the astonished assembly, filaments of living crystal formed a lattice across Finn's exposed skin. Not penetrating, but merging, and creating a network of light that pulsed in rhythm with Nixara's own illumination. "I claim this one." Her declaration thundered through the collective consciousness. Not as sacrifice, but as bondmate. The amphitheater erupted in mental chaos. Drakkar's rage manifested as crimson flares across his exoskeleton. "Blasphemy! The Starfallen cannot bond. They are vessels, not equals." Nixara's grip tightened on Finn's hand. Crystal network between them solidified. And suddenly Finn could sense the outline of her thoughts, not just the projected communications, but the underlying emotions. Determination, defiance, and something unexpected. Hope. The ancient texts speak of evolution through unity, she responded calmly. The bond has begun. To break it now would violate laws older than sacrifice. Finn found himself standing straighter, somehow emboldened by the connection. I don't understand what's happening, he said, but I choose life over sacrifice, and I accept whatever this bond entails. His words, though spoken aloud, rippled through the telepathic field. Several Soltari recoiled in shock. The outsider response to the collective came murmurs of alarm. Drakkar stepped forward, crystal weapons forming from his limbs. This abomination cannot stand. If you will not uphold our ways, Nixera, then your leadership is forfeit, as is your life, and that of your claimed abomination. Nixera's response was immediate. The crystal floor beneath them liquefied and reformed, creating a protective barrier. Around herself and Finn, the claiming is complete. She projected this time directly to Finn's mind. But our survival is not assured. We must move quickly. With that, the floor beneath them dropped away, and they plummeted into the hidden depths of Terra Luna, leaving behind the outraged cries of Drakkar and his followers. Hunted, they fell through crystalline tunnels, sliding down passages that seemed to form just ahead of their descent. Finn's stomach lurched with each sudden drop and turn, while his mind reeled from the alien connection pulsing through the network of light on his skin. They emerged in a cavern, illuminated by bioluminescent fungi that clung to the walls in spiraling patterns. Unlike the structured city above, this place felt ancient, untamed, a primordial heart of Terra Luna, untouched by Soltari architecture. Mind explaining what just happened up there? Finn asked, examining the delicate crystal filaments that had formed a lattice across his forearm. They glowed with a faint violet light that matched Nixera's core luminescence. Nixera moved to the center of the cavern, her crystalline form catching and amplifying the ambient light. I have broken our most sacred tradition to preserve something more sacred still, which is the truth. She gestured to the cavern walls where, upon closer inspection, Finn could see intricate etchings, pictographs depicting humanoid figures, and Soltari in poses of cooperation rather than sacrifice. Our histories have been edited by those who prefer power over evolution. A tremor shook the cavern, sending small crystal fragments raining from above. Nixera's posture stiffened. Drakkar has mobilized faster than anticipated. The bond between us has disrupted the collective's equilibrium. About that bond, Finn began, but was interrupted by another, stronger tremor. A distant sound echoed through the tunnels, the harmonic resonance of multiple Soltari moving in formation. Questions must wait. They track our resonance pattern. Nixera approached a seemingly solid wall and pressed her appendage against it. The crystal reconfigured, revealing a narrow passage. This leads to the forgotten reaches. Few remember these paths exist. They slipped through the opening just as the sound of pursuers grew louder. The passage sealed behind them, leaving no trace of their exit. The new tunnel sloped downward, taking them deeper into Terra Luna's crust. The ambient temperature rose noticeably, and the crystal compositions changed from clear and blue tones to amber and deep red. Where are we going? Finn asked, keeping pace with Nixera's fluid movements to the thermal vents. Their electromagnetic properties will mask our bond signature temporarily as they progressed. Finn became increasingly aware of Nixera's presence in his mind, not intrusive, but present, like background music, gradually becoming more distinct. Emotions that weren't his occasionally surfaced: concern, determination, and something more complex he couldn't quite name. I can feel you, he said quietly. In my head. It's getting stronger. Nixera paused, turning to face him. The claiming bond matures rapidly. Your neural architecture adapts remarkably well for a species with no evolutionary history of telepathy. Is that why you chose me instead of, harvesting my life force or whatever was supposed to happen? Partially. Her mental voice carried a nuance of hesitation. Your crash was not random, Finn Morgan. The electromagnetic storm that disabled your vessel was generated by Terra Luna, itself by the living crystal that forms both this moon and my people. You were ... called. Before Finn could process this revelation, a crystalline spear shattered against the wall beside them. Three Soltari warriors blocked the tunnel ahead, their formations glowing aggressive red Drakker's followers. "Run," Nyxara commanded, her appendages reconfiguring into defensive blades. They doubled back, taking a narrow offshoot tunnel that Finn hadn't noticed before. The passage became increasingly tight, forcing them to move single file. Behind them, the harmonic resonance of pursuit echoed, multiplying as more warriors joined the hunt. The tunnel opened suddenly into a vast chamber, dominated by bubbling pools of luminescent liquid. Steam rose in colorful plumes, creating a disorienting haze. The heat was intense, pushing the limits of Finn's tolerance. "The thermal vents," Nyxara explained, leading him along a narrow path between the pools. "The mineral composition disrupts. Telepathic signals. We will be momentarily shielded from the collective," as if responding to her words. The crystal network on Finn's skin dimmed slightly. The constant awareness of Nyxara's presence receded, leaving an unexpected emptiness that was almost physically uncomfortable. "I feel disconnected," he said, surprised by how disconcerting the sensation was. "The bond has progressed further than anticipated. Already you grow accustomed to the shared consciousness." They reached a small island of solid crystal in the center of the chamber. Nyxara gestured for Finn to sit, then positioned herself opposite him. In the swirling steam and shifting light, her crystalline form seemed to phase between solid and ethereal. "We have little time before they track us, through conventional means. I must accelerate your understanding." She extended both appendages. After a moment's hesitation, Finn took them in his hands. The contact was electric even, with the thermal vents dampening effect. The connection between them flared to life. Suddenly, Finn wasn't just receiving projected thoughts, but experiencing memories, Nyxara's memories. He saw Terra Luna centuries ago, when the Soltari first discovered the ritual of sacrifice. He witnessed the gradual corruption of their society as leaders like Draker realized that consuming the energy of other beings enhanced their personal power within the collective. And he saw something else, recurring visions that had haunted Nyxara. For decades, visions of a human arriving from the stars, forming a bond that would transform Soltari civilization. When the memory share ended, Finn gasped, overwhelmed by the intensity. "You've been waiting for me? Or someone like me?" "For you specifically," Nyxara corrected. "The void shows patterns across time. Your unique neural signature has been visible in my meditations for many cycles." A loud crack interrupted them as a section of the chamber wall shattered. Drakor stepped through the opening, flanked by a dozen warriors. His crystal formations pulsed with malevolent energy. "Found you." His mental voice boomed, even through the thermal interference. "The blasphemy ends." Now, Nyxara rose to her full height, positioning herself between Finn and the threat. "You cannot stop what has already begun, Drakkar. The evolution approaches." Drakkar's response was not words, but action. He launched himself across the narrow paths between thermal pools, crystal weapons extended. Nyxara met his charge, their formations clashing with a sound like breaking glass. Finn scrambled to his feet, searching for anything he might use as a weapon. The crystal beneath him responded to his thought, reshaping itself into a jagged spear that felt perfectly balanced in his hand. The bond was evolving, faster than either of them had anticipated. And in that moment of realization, Finn understood they would either escape together or not at all. The revelation, the skirmish at the thermal vents, ended in a desperate escape. Nyxara had created a diversion destabilizing one of the pools to a geyser of scalding liquid, allowing them to flee through a maintenance passage known only to Terra Luna's leadership caste. Now they huddled in a crystal alcove deep within the moon's mantle. Here, massive geode chambers sparkled with untouched formations. The bond between them had strengthened during their flight, and Finn found he could sense Nyxara's thoughts without physical contact. "You knew I was coming," Finn said, examining a wound on his arm where a crystal shard had grazed him during their escape. The injury was already healing, crystal filaments from his bond network sealing the damaged tissue. "That's why you didn't sacrifice me." Nyxara's formations shifted in what Finn now recognized as contemplation. Partial truth. "I have foreseen your arrival, yes, The decision to claim rather than sacrifice was made in the moment when I sensed your mind's unusual compatibility. She approached, placing a crystalline appendage gently on his healed wound. Our species were never meant to be predator and prey, Finn Morgan. The sacrificial rites began as a misinterpretation of ancient wisdom, then became a mechanism of control. Through their connection, Nixara shared a condensed history. The Soltari, once a peaceful collective consciousness, had discovered that off-world visitors carried energy patterns that could temporarily enhance their abilities. What began as cultural exchange became exploitation. Leaders like Draker maintained power by convincing the collective that sacrifice was necessary for survival. And you've known this was wrong all along? I suspected. The ancient chambers like this one contain records predating our current civilization. They speak of synthesis, not consumption, of evolution through connection. A distant rumble interrupted them. Draker's forces were systematically searching the lower chambers. We have little time, Nixara projected urgently.
Draker
has accessed the chamber of resonance. If he activates the ancient harmonics, he can sever our bond and potentially destroy both our minds in the process. Then we need to stop him, Finn said simply. But how? We're outnumbered, and I'm still figuring out how this bond even works.
Apps.
Crystalline form brightened with sudden intensity. The bond is the key. The prophecies speak of transformation through unity, not just symbolic, but literal change. She guided him to the center of the geode chamber, where a formation of black crystal rose from the floor, similar to the sacrificial dais, but untainted by centuries of misuse. This is a resonance nexus, a focal point where Terra Luna's consciousness can be accessed directly. Through it, we can demonstrate the truth to the entire collective simultaneously. You want to broadcast our bond to all Soltari at once? More, I believe the complete bond fully realized will trigger the evolution our ancestors foresaw. It requires absolute trust. Finn, our minds will merge more completely than any Soltari has experienced with an outsider. The rumbling grew louder. They had minutes at most. Finn took a deep breath, considering the impossibility of his situation. 3 days ago, he'd been a normal human scout. Now he stood on an alien moon, telepathically bonded to a crystalline being, preparing to attempt some kind of species-wide revelation. And yet, through their connection, he sensed no deception from Nixara, only hope and a curious emotion that felt remarkably like affection. What do we do? Nixara positioned herself on one side of the black crystal. Place your hands on the nexus. Open your mind completely. Hold nothing back. No memories, no emotions, no thoughts. The merging must be absolute. As Finn placed his palms against the cool crystal surface, the chamber entrance shattered. Draker stood framed in the opening, holding an ancient artifact that pulsed with ominous energy. The harmonic severer Nixara identified through their link. Hurry. Finn pressed his hands firmly against the nexus and dropped his mental barriers. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. His consciousness expanded outward, merging not just with Nixara, but with Terra Luna itself. He sensed thousands of Soltari minds suddenly connected to his own, their shock, curiosity, and wonder washing over him. Through this expanded awareness, he understood what Draker had concealed from his people for generations. The Soltari were not separate from the crystal moon, but extensions of it. The sacrifices had never been necessary. They had always been capable of sustaining themselves through harmonious connection with Terra Luna's core energy. As this revelation spread through the collective consciousness, the crystal network on Finn's skin began to glow with increasing brightness. Nixara's form similarly intensified, till they both shone like twin stars in the darkness of the geode. Draker raised the harmonic severer, its ancient technology charging for a destructive pulse. But before he could activate it, the transformation reached its crescendo. The light from Finn and Nixara's merged consciousness expanded outward in a wave of crystalline energy, washing over Draker and continuing beyond, racing through tunnels and chambers to touch every Soltari in the colony. In that moment of perfect clarity, evolution began. Evolution, the wave of crystalline energy radiated outward from the resonance nexus, transforming everything it touched. The black crystal beneath Finn's hands cracked open, revealing a core of pulsating light that matched the rhythm of his heartbeat. Through his expanded consciousness, he felt the wave reach every corner of Terra Luna, connecting all Soltari in a moment of unprecedented unity. Drakkar had dropped to his knees, the harmonic severe falling useless from his grasp. His crystal formations flickered between aggressive red and a softer, uncertain blue as the collective revelation stripped away centuries of deception. It was never necessary. The collective awareness rippled with the understanding, the sacrifices, the hierarchy, the isolation. All constructs built on fear. Finn felt himself changing. The crystal lattice that had formed on his skin during the initial bond was now integrating deeper, creating a harmonious hybrid physiology. He remained human, but augmented his consciousness, expanded. His body strengthened by a living crystal that responded to his thoughts. Across from him, Nyxara underwent her own transformation. Her rigid formations became more fluid, more adaptable. Aspects of human empathy and individual thought merged with her collective consciousness, creating something entirely new. When the initial wave subsided, they stepped away from the nexus. Still connected, but now individually whole in a way neither had been before. The chamber had filled with Soltari, drawn by the psychic event. They observed the transformed pair with collective wonder rather than hostility. "You understand now," Finn said, surprised to find he could speak both verbally and telepathically simultaneously. "Yes," Nyxara confirmed. "The truth cannot be unknown." Once experienced directly, among the gathered Soltari, Drakkar struggled to his feet. His formations had stabilized into a muted purple, either the aggressive read of before, or fully integrated with the new consciousness. "You have destroyed everything we built," he projected, though his thoughts lacked their former conviction. "No," Finn replied. "We've remembered what you forgot. There's a difference." He approached Drakkar without fear, aware through the collective consciousness that the danger had passed. The revelation had neutralized the former leader's influence. Without willing sacrifices or followers who believed in the necessity of such acts, his power structure had dissolved. Nyxara moved to Finn's side, their energies naturally synchronizing. The choice remains, as it always has. Evolution or stagnation. Connection or isolation. She extended an appendage toward Drakkar, not in threat, but in offering. After a moment's hesitation, he accepted the connection. The last of his resistance crumbled as he accessed the truth through direct experience rather than explanation. "I believed." Drakkar's mental voice was subdued. "I truly believed the sacrifices were necessary for our survival." "Many did," Finn acknowledged. Fear is a powerful motivator across all species. Over the next several days, Terra Luna transformed. The crystalline architecture of the city, once rigid and hierarchical, reconfigured into open, connected spaces that encouraged community rather than separation. The amphitheater where sacrifices had occurred was repurposed as a communication hub, connecting the Soltari with Finn's human colony ships that responded to his long-dormant emergency beacon. The initial contact was cautious on both sides. Humans, with their limited understanding of telepathic species, approached with scientific curiosity and diplomatic uncertainty. The Soltari, newly awakened to their true nature, projected openness but maintained appropriate boundaries. Finn and Nyxara served as natural intermediaries, their hybrid nature bridging the biological and philosophical gaps between the species. They established the first interspecies protocols, creating frameworks for communication that respected both human individuality and Soltari collective consciousness. 1 month after the transformation, they stood together on the surface of Terra Luna, watching as the first official human delegation prepared to depart with preliminary alliance agreements. The diplomatic team had been hesitant at first, particularly around Finn's transformed state. But his retained humanity alongside his new abilities had eventually eased their concerns. "They'll be back," Finn said, observing the shuttle's preparations. "Humans are nothing if not curious." Nyxara's crystalline form shimmered in the starlight, and the Soltari are ready for connection rather than consumption. Significant improvement. In interspecies relations, through their bond, Finn felt her subtle humor, another adaptation she'd developed from their merged consciousness. He smiled, still marveling at how natural their connection had become. "What happens now?" he asked, gazing up at the gas giant that dominated Terra Luna's sky. "For us, I mean. Evolution is not a destination but a journey," Nixara responded, her thoughts carrying affection and certainty. "Our bond continues to develop." The prophecies spoke of the beginning, not the end. She extended her appendage, and Finn took it without hesitation. The contact sent familiar waves of connection between them, strengthening their unique bond. Together, they watched as the human shuttle rose from the crystalline surface, its lights diminishing as it accelerated toward the waiting starship. Behind them, the newly transformed Soltari city glowed with harmonious light. Before them stretched the vast cosmos, filled with possibilities for both their species. And between them pulsed a connection that defied conventional understanding, neither fully human nor fully Soltari, but something gloriously, impossibly. Finn squeezed Nixara's appendage gently. "I crashed on this moon expecting to die alone in space. Instead became the catalyst for transformation," she completed his thought. "Perhaps there are no accidents in the cosmos, only patterns we haven't yet recognized." As the shuttle disappeared from view, they turned back toward the Crystal City. The first human soul, Tari Cultural Exchange Center, was under construction. A physical manifestation of the bridge they had created through their improbable bond. The future remained unwritten. But for the first time in centuries, both species approached it with hope rather than fear, connection rather than isolation. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, evolve through unity, stronger through difference, and guided by the knowledge that the most powerful force in the universe wasn't dominance or consumption, the willingness to transform through understanding. For Finn Morgan, former human scout, and Nixara, former Soltari leader, this was just the beginning of a journey neither could have imagined alone. Cosmic evolution sparked by an unexpected crash landing and sustained by the most unlikely of bonds.